Think camping is dangerous today? You wouldn't last one night sleeping in the open on the ancient Silk Road. While modern travelers worry about bears or bad weather, from scorpions to sandstorms, Silk Road merchants faced threats that could kill you in dozens of different ways before sunrise. We're talking about a 4,000-mile journey through some of the most hostile terrain on Earth, where a single mistake in choosing where to sleep could mean death for you and your entire caravan. But here's what most people don't realize. The Silk Road wasn't just about merchants trading silk and spices. It was about survival. And the deadliest part of the entire journey wasn't the bandits, the desert heat, or even getting lost. It was simply trying to sleep safely through the night. The darkness brought dangers that would make modern horror movies look like children's bedtime stories. I've spent months researching historical accounts from Silk Road travelers, archaeological evidence from ancient campsites, and medical records from trading posts along the route. What I discovered is a catalog of nighttime terrors that killed more merchants than wars, famines, and natural disasters combined. In this video, I'm going to reveal the top 10 deadly dangers that Silk Road travelers faced when sleeping in the open, from venomous creatures that could kill you with a single bite to natural disasters that struck without warning. Plus, I'll show you the desperate survival techniques that some merchants use to make it through the night alive. Danger number 10, fear of spirits and the unknown. Let's start with something that might sound superstitious to modern people, but was absolutely real to Silk Road travelers: the psychological terror of sleeping alone in the vast emptiness of Central Asia. Picture this. You're lying on the ground in complete darkness, hundreds of miles from the nearest settlement. The silence is so absolute that you can hear your own heartbeat. Then, carried on the wind across the endless steppe, you hear something that makes your blood freeze. Voices calling in languages you don't recognize, footsteps that seem to circle your camp, or the sound of bells from caravans that aren't there. Marco Polo himself wrote about evil spirits that would call travelers names in the night, trying to lure them away from their camps to die lost in the desert. One 13th century Persian merchant described hearing the sound of a massive army marching past their camp: horses, armor, voices shouting orders. But when dawn came, there were no tracks, no signs that anyone had passed. But here's the deadly part. This psychological terror wasn't just frightening, it was fatal. Travelers who broke and ran from their camps in panic would become lost in the darkness, dying of exposure or falling into ravines. Others would stay awake for days, too terrified to sleep, until exhaustion made them easy prey for the very real dangers that stalked the Silk Road. But as terrifying as the unknown was, there were very real creatures hiding in the darkness that could kill you in minutes. Danger number 9, stampedes in the dark. A typical Silk Road caravan included 200 to 300 camels, dozens of horses, and pack animals worth more than most people earned in a lifetime. These animals were the difference between wealth and death. But they were also walking time bombs that could explode into deadly chaos at any moment. Here's what most people don't understand about pack animals. They're prey animals with hair-trigger flight responses. A single unexpected sound, a wolf howl, a thunderclap, even a merchant coughing too loudly, could send hundreds of panicked animals stampeding through the camp in complete darkness. Imagine being jolted awake by the thunder of hooves and the screaming of terrified animals. The ground shakes beneath you as 300 camels, each weighing over 1,000 pounds, charge through your sleeping area in blind panic. You can't see them coming in the darkness, can't tell which direction is safe. A 12th century Arab merchant described a stampede that started when a camel stepped on a sleeping merchant's hand. The man's scream spooked the nearest animals, which crashed into others, creating a chain reaction that sent the entire caravan into chaos. When dawn came, they found 2 men trampled to death, dozens of animals missing, and their water supplies scattered across miles of desert. But even if you survived the stampede and recovered your animals, you still faced natural disasters that could strike without warning. Danger number 8, sudden storms and floods. Modern weather forecasting gives us days of warning before dangerous storms. Silk Road travelers had no such luxury. They went to sleep under clear skies and woke up drowning, if they woke up at all. In 1219, Venetian merchant Niccolo Polo described a night when his caravan camped in what seemed like a safe valley in the Pamir Mountains. The weather was clear, the location was sheltered from wind, and there was even a small stream for water. It seemed like the perfect campsite. But 20 miles away, a sudden thunderstorm was dumping rain on the mountain peaks. The merchants had no way of knowing that a wall of water was racing down the valley toward their camp. The first sign of danger was a distant rumbling sound that they mistook for thunder. By the time they realized it was rushing water, it was too late to escape. Polo's account describes how the flood swept away half their caravan in minutes. Men, animals, and goods worth a fortune disappeared into the darkness. Those who survived spent the rest of the night clinging to rocks and trees, listening to the screams of drowning merchants and animals being swept away by the current. But natural disasters were random and unpredictable. There was another threat that was far more calculated and deadly. Danger number 7, theft of pack animals. Your animals were your lifeline on the Silk Road. Without camels, horses, or donkeys, you couldn't carry water, food, or trade goods. Losing them meant certain death, which is exactly why thieves targeted them. Animal thieves were specialists who could move through a sleeping camp like ghosts. They knew exactly how to approach different animals without spoking them, how to cut hobbles and lead ropes silently, and how to disappear into the darkness with an entire caravan's worth of livestock. But here's what made animal theft so deadly. The thieves didn't just take your animals. They often killed or injured the animals they couldn't steal, ensuring that surviving merchants couldn't continue their journey. A camel with a severed tendon was worthless for travel, but could still carry water for a few days, giving the thieves time to escape while their victims died slowly of thirst. Merchants who lost their animals faced an impossible choice. Try to continue on foot and die of thirst in the desert, or turn back and lose everything they'd invested in the journey. Most chose to continue, hoping to catch up with other caravans or find replacement animals at the next trading post. Few succeeded, but animal thieves at least left you alive, giving you a chance to survive. There was another group of nighttime predators who weren't interested in keeping you breathing. Danger number 6, bandits in the night. The most feared danger on the Silk Road wasn't nature, it was people. Bandits who struck at night, when travelers were most vulnerable, turning the darkness into a hunting ground for human predators. Silk Road bandits weren't desperate criminals making random attacks. They were organized military units with sophisticated intelligence networks, advanced weapons, and tactics that would impress modern special forces. The most feared bandit leader was a man known as the Night Wolf, who controlled a 200-mile stretch of the route through the Taklamakan Desert. His men would infiltrate caravans disguised as merchants or guides, then signal the main force when the caravan made camp. Historical records credit him with over 300 successful attacks. Bandit attacks followed sophisticated patterns designed to maximize confusion and minimize resistance. They would typically strike just before dawn, when guards were most tired and visibility was poor. Multiple groups would attack simultaneously from different directions, using fire arrows to create chaos and panic among the animals. But the bandits didn't just kill for profit. They killed to send messages. Merchants who resisted too effectively would be tortured and mutilated, their bodies left as warnings to other caravans. The psychological warfare was as important as the actual robbery. Danger number 5, predatory animals. While bandits were the most feared human threat, the Silk Road was also home to predators that saw sleeping merchants as easy prey. We're not talking about scavenging animals. We're talking about apex predators that actively hunted humans. Wolves were the most common threat, traveling in packs of 20 to 30 animals that could take down camels, horses, and humans with equal efficiency. But in the mountains, merchants faced even deadlier predators: snow leopards, brown bears, and in some regions, even tigers that had learned to associate human camps with easy meals. One particularly effective predator tactic was the coordinated pack attack. Wolves would send scouts to observe human camps for days, learning the patterns of guard rotations and identifying the weakest points in the defenses. Then they would attack in waves, with some wolves creating distractions while others went for the kill. Historical accounts describe attacks where entire families of merchants were killed in their sleep by wolf packs. The animals would drag bodies away from the camps to feed, leaving behind only bloodstains and scattered equipment. Danger number 4, sandstorms and dust storms. While predators and bandits were terrifying, they were at least visible enemies you could fight. Sandstorms were different. They were invisible killers that could strike without warning and bury entire caravans alive. When a sandstorm hit, merchants had minutes to prepare for what could be hours or even days of hell. They would cover their faces with cloth, secure their animals, and huddle together for protection. But the sand would find its way into everything: eyes, nose, mouth, lungs. The worst part came after the storm passed. Landmarks would be buried or completely changed. Wells would be filled with sand. Entire sections of the route would be unrecognizable. Caravans that survived the storm itself often died of thirst because they could no longer find water sources. Archaeological teams have uncovered entire caravans buried by sandstorms, preserved exactly as they died. One site in the Taklamakan Desert contained 47 merchants and over 200 animals, all buried in a single storm event. The merchants were found huddled together, cloth wrapped around their faces, still clutching their most valuable possessions. Danger number 3: freezing cold at night. Modern people think of deserts as hot, but Silk Road merchants knew a deadly secret. Desert nights could be colder than Arctic winters. The same sand that burned your feet during the day would freeze solid at night, creating conditions that could kill you in hours. The temperature swings were extreme, from 120 degrees Fahrenheit during the day to below freezing at night. Without proper shelter and warm clothing, merchants would literally freeze to death in their sleep, their bodies found stiff and blue in the morning. What made the cold so deadly was that merchants were often already weakened by heat exhaustion from the day's travel. Their bodies couldn't regulate temperature effectively, making them vulnerable to hypothermia even in relatively mild cold. Danger number 2: insects and disease. While dramatic deaths from bandits and predators get the most attention, insects killed more Silk Road travelers than any other single cause. These tiny creatures carried diseases that could wipe out entire caravans. Mosquitoes carried malaria, which caused fever, chills, and eventually death. Fleas spread bubonic plague, which could kill within days. Ticks transmitted diseases that caused paralysis and organ failure. Even common lice could spread typhus, turning a minor annoyance into a death sentence. The worst part was that insect-borne diseases were often delayed killers. A merchant might be bitten by an infected mosquito and feel fine for weeks, only to collapse and die hundreds of miles later when medical help was impossible to find. Even if the diseases didn't kill directly, they weakened travelers and made them vulnerable to other threats. A merchant suffering from malaria was easy prey for bandits, more likely to make fatal mistakes in navigation, and less able to survive the physical demands of the journey. Danger number 1: venomous creatures. The deadliest threat to sleeping Silk Road merchants wasn't dramatic or obvious. It was small, silent, and could kill you with a single bite or sting before you even knew you were in danger. Scorpions, snakes, and venomous spiders were perfectly adapted to desert life, and they saw sleeping humans as either threats to eliminate or warm places to hide. A scorpion seeking warmth might crawl into a merchant's bedroll, only to sting when the person rolled over in their sleep. The venom from these creatures caused excruciating pain, paralysis, and death, often in that order. Without modern anti-venom or medical care, a single sting or bite in the middle of the desert was essentially a death sentence. Excavations of Silk Road campsites have uncovered the remains of merchants who clearly died from envenomation, their bodies contorted in the characteristic positions of venom victims, sometimes still clutching at their throats or the site of the bite. So how did any merchants survive these nighttime horrors? The ones who made it through developed survival strategies that were passed down through generations of traders. Successful merchants always traveled in large groups and slept in tight formations. They chose campsites carefully, avoiding dry riverbeds and animal trails. They maintained constant vigilance with guards in shifts throughout the night. They prepared for everything, carrying anti-venom, warm clothing, and weapons. And they knew when to run. Sometimes the best survival strategy was avoiding dangerous situations entirely. You might wonder why any of this matters for modern people who will never travel the ancient Silk Road. But the survival principles that kept merchants alive are just as relevant today. The merchants who survived understood risk assessment, preparation, teamwork, and the importance of staying alert in dangerous situations. These skills are valuable whether you're camping in the wilderness, traveling in unfamiliar places, or just navigating the challenges of modern life. The Silk Road merchants who risked these deadly nights weren't just brave, they were desperate. The potential profits from successful trade were so enormous that merchants were willing to face almost certain death for the chance at wealth. For every merchant who made it through safely, dozens died along the route. The Silk Road was littered with the bones of traders who underestimated the dangers of sleeping in the open, made poor decisions about campsites, or simply had bad luck. But their sacrifice created the first global economy, connecting civilizations and spreading knowledge, technology, and culture across continents. The goods, ideas, and innovations that traveled the Silk Road shaped the world we live in today. Every time you use paper, drink tea, or benefit from any of the countless innovations that spread along the Silk Road, remember the merchants who died in the darkness to make it possible. Their courage in the face of unimaginable dangers created the connected world we take for granted. Speaking of deadly Silk Road dangers, what I've just shown you is nothing compared to the brutal realities that merchants faced during the day. There's one particular threat that was so terrifying. Entire caravans would change their routes to avoid it, but this knowledge is disappearing as ancient records crumble. Click here to discover the daytime dangers that made Silk Road nights look safe by comparison, and I'll see you in the next one.